We heard about the Accessible Denver initiative, and so we traveled to the Mile High City to check out what makes Denver so friendly to people with disabilities, and why the folks in Denver consider accessibility to be good business.
You know, I'm a recent person in a wheelchair, and the shift in my life was so dramatic. And I'm an architect, and so before I used to understand, I thought I understood because of the codes, and you don't really know the spirit of accessibility until you have to figure out how to do it.
Well, I think we are ahead of other cities, but we have a long way to go. I mean, our goal would be to make Denver the most disability-friendly city in the country, and a place where people can get around no matter what their challenges, that we do everything we can to make sure that they have mobility and freedom of movement. Well, I mean, we're spending a couple $1 million a year on just curb cuts and trying to make sure that if someone's in a wheelchair, no matter where they are, they can get easily off the curb and across the street. And we urge people to call in.
It started partially because I was new to Denver. I came here in 2000 to learn how to be a, quote, successful blind person. And in the program that I attended, I fell in love with Denver and realized how much Denver has to offer and how little people knew about Denver, particularly in the disability community. And I've attended a lot of workshops and conventions having to do with disabilities, and you know, in those situations you have to find out where do you take the dog and all the things that are particular to being able to function in a new city. And that material wasn't there until I went to a convention in San Francisco, and I came across a paper guide talking about the things that people with disabilities need to know in order to do well in San Francisco.
Our goal is just to make sure we have all the information everywhere, and part of making that information everywhere, we think, raises the consciousness of the whole community, so that there are no places that a wheelchair can't go, and that there are no places where a seeing eye dog isn't welcome. That, you know, again, that the city does become fully accessible.
The issue is for people just to see that with a little bit of consideration, with a little bit of help, maybe an adaptation here and whatever, that we're able to do whatever it is that anybody else can do.
I think one of the things that Denver, and when I was in the, you know, I'd never run for office before I ran for mayor in 2003. I'd been in the restaurant business, and there are a couple of nonprofit organizations run by people with disabilities that act as consultants. So when we were building our restaurant, they would come in for a very modest fee, several $1,000s. They would come in and advise us on what are the most effective and efficient ways to make our restaurants accessible. And I think that notion of actually, instead of letting some architect or designer tell you, oh, and by the way, you should be accessible, and here you might do this, having an organization, a nonprofit that's actually raising money, creating paid jobs for people with disabilities, that comes in and allows someone with that perspective that has a lifetime of experience of the inconvenience in one form or another, and how in many cases for almost no money you can change that with just a little bit of thought. I've always welcomed that, and I've been surprised that a lot of cities don't have that. So I guess I would say to the viewers, take one of those nonprofit organizations, and most cities do have one or two or a number of groups that kind of represent the rights of people with disabilities. Get them into that consulting business, because I think it's a great, most people in the business community want to do the right thing. They just oftentimes, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough time. If there's a way to make it easy, the way these groups did for us, I think it's a good thing.
Part of my job is to make sure that perspective is honored in council meetings or in neighborhood meetings or when they're developing plans and procedures within the city, that we have people with disabilities on those committees and giving them that perspective. So that's part of what they're going to plan for, make sure that design is in there.
As host to the 2008 Democratic National Convention, Denver needed a way to help visitors connect with special supports they might need while in town and to find accessible transportation.
And we finally got to a point when the DNC was coming here that, hey, this is a great opportunity to provide this resource to people who are traveling to Denver. So we got with my executive director, who is Lucia Guzman, and got some funding for it, and that got it off the ground and got us rolling. And from there, it's kind of just gained that momentum, and it's being revamped right now to make it even better. So we've been real proud of it.
people with disabilities aren't on our radar screen. And they just really, wouldn't get calls returned or anything. And finally, as we came toward the Democratic National Convention, it became clear that people with disabilities are going to have to do this guide. It needs to be done. We're going to have a lot of people with disabilities coming, and we weren't prepared. And so, fortunately, the Human Rights and Community Relations Committee agency found some money in their budget. It's a city agency, and the Denver Commission for People with Disabilities falls under the HRCR. They found some money to hire a web designer. And the Denver Center for the Performing Arts loved the idea, and they coughed up some money. So we were able to raise enough money, all of $6,000, for a project that other people have told me would cost around $280,000, because this is a website by people with disabilities for people with disabilities, and that's what really pleases me so much.
If you prefer to use the telephone, you can also call 311 while in Denver for accessibility and service information. Now that we know how to find information on Accessible Denver, let's check out the city.
How do you think the city is doing in terms of access for disabled people?
I think we're doing a very good job at trying to catch up of, say, 20 years worth of, the ADA was passed in 1990, and it's taken a financial commitment, and Hickenlooper is definitely seen to making sure that financial commitment's been there.
We're in the middle of what we call Fast Tracks, which was passed by the voters in 2004. And is the most ambitious, I think, transit initiative in the history of the country. It's 120 miles of new light rail or commuter rail track and bus rapid transit. The notion is we're building an entire system at once, and instead of taking each stop out to the suburbs, which is what would have happened and did happen in most eastern cities, so you have a station with a big parking lot and people driving from their suburban neighborhoods, they all park at the station, go into work. We wanted whole communities and villages around each stop. So we put the stops in brownfield sites, like an old factory that had gone out of business or the jobs had moved abroad. And each stop, we try and change the zoning. So you get like a little village.
We have a light rail system that, and a public transportation system that's 100% accessible to people in wheelchairs.
We have one of the most accessible transportation systems in the country. And, that took an organization like ADAPT some years ago to protest and get RTD to have accessible buses, and now you can get most anywhere in the city with public transportation, which is a wonderful thing for us to have.
We were involved with making sure that there was some real important pieces like transportation was key, and making sure what does that mean to have transportation? Is it just the buses? No, it's the taxi cabs and some of those other businesses that are accessible.
Well, I would say that Denver is open for business for everyone, and that I would not say we're satisfied where we are in terms of full accessibility. We've got some distance to go, but I think we're moving as fast as any city in America to make every corner of our city accessible, and not just okay accessibility, right? Really accessible, so that the wheelchair seats at Coors Field to watch the Colorado Rockies aren't off in right field, right? They're right there along the first base line, right there along the third base line. They're good seats, right? Now, same thing with the symphony, same thing with our cultural institutions. The notion is, with a little more effort, you can go from being average to excellent. And it doesn't, the jump, it doesn't take that much more effort.
In all cities, paying attention to the needs of this population, and they will benefit. They will benefit far more than what they're giving. Feel free to travel, to do whatever it is that a person with disabilities wants to do, because there's a way to do it. To me, Denver is a model for people with disabilities.
So I'd tell everyone, come on down.
For more information on accessible travel in Denver, go to denvergov.org/accessibledenver.